Hello, hello, everyone. Gotta clear my throat. I was on retreat with one of my favorite teachers, Shanti. Whoops, took our world here. And, right before he'd give a talk or take questions, and then right before we'd start meditating, he'd say, have us start to guide us into a meditation. And he the whole hall, this was big groups of on retreat with him, sometimes 300 people or so, and then everyone would start clearing their throats. And he would say that he'd tell us that's unnecessary, that it's a nervous reaction. So in my case today, I'm fighting a cold, and for that reason, I need one more thing to get ready. Um, I need my box of tissues close by. So hello, hello. I think Steve is here with me live in in the real time. It's great to be together again. And I think Tanya was signed up, and I know many others of you will be joining at some point. So let's get started. And as if like me, if you I've been preparing for the last half hour for this. It takes a while to get this room set up and all. But we do want to make sure we have the things that we need with us. Comfortable space, maybe some layers. I know I might get chilly, so I've got an extra wrap. Uh, have what you need. Box of tissues, your tea, and let's begin to arrive for this half hour together. Really make space for serendipity, make space for the unknown, to make space for what I'll talk a little bit about today, for uh, the capacity we have. I guess it's for meeting the unknown, but also for turning on the calm switch, the switch for calm. So today's practice, this half hour, always consists of getting grounded, arriving, reintroducing my theme, a bit of movement, and then our meditation practice. Usually in that order, but I actually might start with our movement today. Um, Grounding first, arriving and grounding. I just had a flash. I'm planning. I think I can do this next Friday night. An event at our Fairfax studio with a fellow named Reggie Hubbard, who I have not met, but he's a good friend of one of our teachers, Kristen Verderame. And I think it's a sound bath. I haven't read the details. I think it's a sound bath meditation. I love sound baths when the instructor brings instruments, singing bowls, and mostly we're relaxing and meditating and allowing those sound waves to meet us, pass through us. Why did I jump there? I was sort of envisioning myself for this brief moment of arriving there next Friday evening. I think it's from 6 to 7:30. Just as I'm arriving right here after the busyness of setting up, taking care of my pets. Just feel for yourself what this the effort, the intent of arriving, of just noticing ourselves right here. What are the resources that you bring to that, to this? Perhaps feeling for the breath. The breath comes into play of gathering our attention to just this moment. Hard to separate out as you start to feel the breath. You'll also start to be more aware of parts of your body that maybe you hadn't attended to. The belly, the throat. The breath brings us to the immediacy of now. And perhaps, like me, you can savor starting to feel the ground. Feel the ground right here underneath us. As long as we're on this planet Earth, she's here for us. And I often think of a teaching I remember from Pema Chodron that cautions us that the rug gets pulled out from under us over and over again, and we're surprised by that. So how do we find our ground when it seems to shift from underneath us? And it's a bit more metaphorical, but it can be literal, like friends who have been in earthquake locations or huge weather events like floods and fires. So there's something in arriving that this grounding, I also think of it as centering. They're a little different, and yet for me they're very related and interconnected. So in finding my grounding, I often talk about that I feel for that vertical axis of gravity. And when we're sitting upright or standing, that vertical axis is along the line of our head to tail or head to feet. If you're choosing to be lying down, you can still use that for your centering, but the grounding then would be all the back body against the ground or the side or the front body. And the yogis, they talk about that how we come to our this peaceful state that we would like to tap into more and more is to gather into that central channel. And it doesn't mean we lose sight of or consciousness of all that's around us, but it can be helpful to really focus in on that central channel, the column. I sometimes see it as a large long glass tube, a few inches in diameter. That's sort of a lava lamp like tube that's fluid inside, but very much at center. And there's a lot of resistances we have to staying at center, to being in the moment, whether it's fear, whether it's some kind of thought pulling us away, some urgency. And yet we can learn, can feel, we can experience that it's possible to just stay as the Buddha did, even as accosted by, what was it, Mara, or by a storm of negativity. We can reach out and touch the ground and feel the infinite eternity, the boundlessness of this presence. So that's really taken me to a deep, still place. Maybe that's true for you as well, and maybe not, or maybe some combination. what I'd like to do now is something a little more active than I usually offer here. I'd like to start with a qigong movement, and it's optimal standing. So let me adjust my aperture here. Come to standing. If you're not, if you prefer to stay laying down where you are, that's fine too. Probably won't even see my whole body in this. Yeah, you won't see. Oh, I'll do it from my knees. So you can do it from standing. It's called shaking the tree. It's often one of the initial qigong. I'm not an expert in qigong by any means. I've enjoyed it, dabbled with it. Um, this again. Uh, Maybe you're familiar with it. It's often one of the first movements that's done to just start to bring us to presence and harmonize. And it's to we imagine that our body is the big tree trunk and our arms are the branches, and we just shake and jiggle every part of us as much as possible. My rings are flying off. Shake, shake and jiggle your head, your shoulders, your buttocks, your knees, your all your as say, I'm thinking of Baxter Bell. All your jiggly parts, let the jiggly parts jiggle because it feels so good. We're often embarrassed of the jiggly parts, but aren't they wonderful? Jiggly parts. Mhm. If you like, you can make some sound, a nice, some often called cleansing exhale. Actually, on the tail of that jiggling, and I selfishly needed to do that to help move the lymph, to get this cold, this congestion moving through me. But it's good for all parts of us. I'm going to follow with a second Qigong movement. Whew. And this one I also love. It's called dropping the post. If you're in an apartment and somebody lives below you, you may hear from them. But I'm right above the garage, so nobody's there right now that I know of, besides the spider crickets. Okay, and how we do this is we come up onto our toes, so my heels lift. I flex at my wrists and then drop the post, bent knees a little bit, releasing the arms, wrists, the heels drop. Inhale, flex the wrist, lift off the heels, drop the post with an exhale. Inhale, lift. This is like, dropping the post into making a fence, those posts, which my brother, who's, my near my age, 60, coming on 61, he has built his own fence around his house. Incredible. He dropped those posts, dug the holes. One more. And then just stand and feel the ground here, the center and that channel. If you did this, you really couldn't do that one. Maybe you had a creative way. If you've chosen lying down, you could have bent your knees and kind of lifted the heels and dropped. Can We can modify to adjust to where we are, to the particular asana, the particular place we're at. So just check into what your feel of your energy is right now. Your energy. I love that word, but for so many people, sort of feels like, what is that? It's a temperature. It's a feel of the how fast your mind is moving, where your thoughts are. It's a feel of your gut. We all can tap into more and more subtle sensations. And for yourself, just give a couple labels, couple quick words or phrases, or maybe it's a gesture of what your experience right now is. For me, I would say, just to model it, I'm just going to make a gesture like this, like my hands coming down slowly, like things have calmed, quieted, calmed, become more heavy, stable. And when we say these, when we bring these labels for ourselves, this is an exercise I often include in my practices. A part of, I would say, it's the inquiry part of my practices. it's very valuable to be more accurate in what we're feeling, sensing, what we think is happening with us, what is our truth in that moment. Because when we take something general, and for let's take the one that's coming to mind for me is pain. We often say, I'm in pain, but it's such a big generality that it's difficult to know what to do with that. You might know you can take an ibuprofen, but we might need to be more specific in terms of maybe the pain is in the gut, and maybe then it's not ibuprofen you need, but Tums, so or a glass of hot water with lemon juice, or something different. And that's a whole big chapter of its own, but really valuable. All right, so choose where you'd like to be for a little bit of talk about the theme I'm thinking of today. Maybe you'll stay standing. Maybe you just really, my standing position felt really nice, but for guiding this, I'd like to get to my seated place now. Um, so, uh, turning on the calm switch. You might have heard in your from your teachers and from modern psychoneurobiology, I think is the term. There's lots of research being done on how our nervous system, our brains are linked to our muscular system, how the body and mind are not separate. For a long time, I had a hard time remembering some of these terms. I'll tell you in just a moment. So our nervous system has a part that's conscious, like I can choose to make gestures with my hands, or I can choose to speak or jump or drop the post, whatnot. And our nervous system also has an unconscious or autonomic part. Forget what the I forget what the opposite of the one we have control over. I forget the name of that. You probably know. Anywho, in the autonomic part, there are two branches. Autonomic, that's the part that goes no matter that is on no matter what. So it helps us so we don't need to be in control of our digestion, of our liver, of our heart rate, of things like that. So, but they are influenced by our thoughts and stuff. However, there are two parts in the autonomic. There's the part that is sympathetic, which I correlate S is for stress, and there's the parasympathetic. P is for peace. And once I had those P's and S's separate, I really was able to remember them some years ago. So the sympathetic, the stress one, the stress response is what you're familiar with, the fight or flight or freeze. And the parasympathetic, that is one that's connected to what's another big buzzword recently is the vagal tone, the vagus nerve, which is a traveling nerve through the body that comes from the brain and visits all the organs. And I don't know if it's also connected. It must be connected to musculature as well, but it's part of it's the switch that turns on the peaceful response. And the challenge we have is that the stress response has there's that bias towards it because it's what saves us from the tiger, from danger. And that one is we're wired in a way that that one will be favored, and it's really important. It's really important that we do run from the tiger. Not modern days, that might not happen as much, but so it seems to me what happens is the responsibility falls to our conscious mind to invoke, to turn on the switch for the parasympathetic, to bring the vagal tone. And that's why we're here together. A big part of it to tap into that calm, quiet, that ability to soothe ourselves, that ability to tune into our breathing, to feel the in-breath, the pause or turn from the in-breath to the out-breath. Feel the pause after the out-breath or the turn that brings us back to the in-breath. And so, something I've been pondering for myself and my own mental mind body health this week is there's so much. I seem to be so pulled. We're all, as I was saying, we're all pulled to the news or our schedules or our to-do lists, um, uh, our expectations of ourselves, our ideas of ourselves. And all of those tend to add to the stress responses. And this morning I was listening. I love it between 7 and 8 on Sunday mornings. There's a podcast, Hidden Brain, is fabulous, fascinating. These topics, and this morning's feature was a fellow who wrote a book called Fluke: Chance, Chaos, and Why Everything You Do Matters. Brian Klaas. And one of the points he made was that we try to be efficient and schedule ourselves so much that we leave out uh, a little bit of buffer time for, we often leave out buffer time for serendipity, for mystery. And so here we are together as we segue now into that opportunity, that buffer time, that buffer zone. And I'm going to read you a poem as we if we segue now to the meditation piece, which for me means stillness, silence, breathing, relaxed awareness. This poem points to leaving that space for the miraculous, the serendipity. So as you uh, settle into that stillness, listen, and for about the next 8 minutes, we will make that space together, tap into that space. This is called The Verge by poet Annie Lighthart. Reason is a fine thing, but remember there are other ways to live, by instinct or passion, or even, maybe, by revelation. Try it. Come around again to the verge, that place of about to open, near where we comprehend and laugh and see. Why shouldn't something marvelous happen to you? Take even an occasion like this. A man reading at night looked up at the window to find a moose looking in, interested and unafraid with quiet, dark eyes. He reports he has never been the same. He finds the ungainly and miraculous everywhere. He said it started the next night in the empty window as he watched his reflection looking right back through. He said he saw his own beauty, and even in his same old face, the quiet eyes were curious and ready to be true. Why shouldn't something marvelous happen to you? So as we sit in this silence and stillness, many visitors may come. Some of them we may enjoy and have a curious and wonderful encounter, like a moose looking into the window, or a moments of peace. And some may be that we dislike or find intruding. We find we want to push them away, like the cramp happening in my belly. We can be the space. We are the space that can actually relax, observe, befriend. Doesn't mean we need to like or deny our resistance, but stay with that switch that turns on parasympathetic, allowing that to be here too. It already is. And always lean back into the resources we've cultivated, the tools we have. Tap into the breath, the ground, center, a mantra. A couple more breaths together in this stillness. I bring my palms together and bow to this practice, to you, to me, to all our fellow beings. Podcast I mentioned, I highly recommend it. I'll put a link to it in the notes. it also says, there was a phrase in it from a social scientist. I think his last name was Page. We control nothing, but we influence everything. There's the featured researcher Klaus gives many stories of how some detail affected huge outcomes. Um, and so this detail that we sit together and we cultivate, turning on the calm switch, that we do that for ourselves, and that resonates out, and it resonates to support our own life. And I invite you to consciously bring it in during any moment to just it's the calm switch here, and just watching a full round of breath or 3 breaths, feeling your feet, just allowing a little extra time to allow for the serendipity in a plan. Thank you. Thank you, Steve, for your note there. A very good book. Yeah, I should read that. I should read that by Porges. Stephen Porges is someone who's talked a lot about the polyvagal world. Thanks for that reference, and thank you for joining me today, all of you. I have this really weird thing. YouTube, this recordings about a year ago, it switched to where I see myself shifted. So my rights and lefts, which so actually something my teacher talks about is we really know how to find center, but as I find I don't find center so easily. Enjoy, everyone. Ciao, ciao. Thank you so much for joining us, and do check out sunandmoonstudio.com. What we're offering virtually and in the reels. Take care.